welcome to another episode of the Weekly Rushes. A rushed rush through the weekly rushes, the news, the headlines, what's happening in the world of movies and streaming for this week. One of the first stories, I suppose I pulled this only because I was thinking, Helena Hutchins' family are currently involved in lawsuits against Alec Baldwin. She was the cinematographer who was accidentally shot on the set of the film Rust. All sorts of litigation is bouncing backwards and forwards as to who's responsible. But there was a story this week sort of essentially telling us the news that Alec Baldwin is returning to acting. It's the first time he's going to be involved in a new project since the fateful shooting event. And it just led me to think, how difficult must that be, both for him, but also Helena Hutchins' family? In the very act of taking on a new role, there's a suggestion that this is something that happened back then, this is in the past, whereas obviously for Helena Hutchins' husband and family, this is very much in the present and they still want resolution. And yet at the same time, for Alec Baldwin, he needs to move on. So, I think, one could see it as insensitive, but at the same time, Alec Baldwin, I guess, has to move on, carry on with his career. But he's not moving on to new projects that are necessarily close to home. And I think this is in itself quite revealing. He's making an acting comeback in a couple of Italian Christmas comedies, one of which is called Kid Santa and the other's called Billy's Magic World. Again, I wonder whether the choice of projects, or maybe he hasn't got a choice of projects. Maybe these are the only projects that have come his way. So he's off to Italy to shoot some children's Christmas films. Seth Rogen. Anyone a Seth Rogen fan? I find him a bit Marmite, which for any Americans is like a sort of food condiment that people either love or loathe. So I've never particularly got on with him. I've kind of, I don't know what. I've always kind of found him a bit like he's trying too hard. Like we know he's being funny or trying to be funny. I sort of have a fondness for him in a sort of avuncular fashion. He's like a sort of relative that you like seeing, but he doesn't rock my world, if I'm honest. Anyway, you may have heard we were talking about there's this new project that Bill Murray's attached to called Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End. It's based on a book, a little bit like This Is Going to Hurt, which starred Ben Whishaw. Finished the series, gotta say, absolutely brilliant. Please check it out. And I kind of hope they don't do a sequel or a follow-up because it just was a neat little series. And I think this has the opportunity to be something similar. So yeah, it's based on a book called Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End, which is written by Atul Gawande, and it's a sort of warts and all sort of profile really of what it means to be a surgeon. We said Bill Murray is in the film. I think Bill Murray's starring in the lead role, but Seth Rogen is also joining him. So it's stacking up to be quite a sort of comedian laden project, which is quite nice because we don't get many of those anymore, do we? Seth Rogen obviously coming off the back of Pam and Tommy, in which he plays one of the erstwhile sort of builders that stumbles across the tape, the infamous Pam and Tommy tape, and so he gets involved in that. And he's currently shooting at the moment the new Spielberg autobiographical film based on Spielberg's youth, and I think Seth Rogen's actually on that point of being avuncular. I think he's playing an avuncular uncle to Steven Spielberg. Now, this is interesting. Ana de Armas. I mean, she is absolutely beautiful. I mean, there's no two ways about it. She's got sort of movie star eyes, movie star face. It's like the golden age, the silver screen. She's got all of that stuff, which is why, not surprisingly, she's been cast to play Marilyn Monroe. If you don't know who Ana de Armas is, she was of course in Knives Out, which is where I first came across her. Well, she's starring in a film for Netflix called Blonde, which is based on the Joyce Carol Oates book of the same name. This is a story, or a fictionalized story, and it's really important to say this isn't a biopic. This is a fictionalized story written by an author that kind of uses historical facts and then runs off into the land of fiction. I've never personally really understood the point of those books because you read them and you end up kind of wanting them to be true, but they're not. And then what's the point of pretending they weren't? I don't get it. I literally don't understand historical fiction. I don't get it. So what's notable about this is that the film's been given it's a Netflix film, it's been given the first NC-17 rating for sexual content. So it's clearly explicit, it's clearly going to be in your face, and this is the first time that, the Motion Pictures Association of America have sort of given a Netflix film or a Netflix series or content this severe rating. The director, in response to this, said, quote, "It's a demanding movie. If the audience doesn't like it, that's the fucking audience's problem. It's not running for public office. It's an NC-17 movie about Marilyn Monroe. It's kind of what you want, right? I want to go and see the NC-17 version of the Marilyn Monroe story." I don't know whether he's got a little bit sort of protective or whether he's come in for a bit of abuse already. His tirade and sort of irrational response makes me worry that perhaps the project hasn't gone according to plan. Anyway, Director, very defensive. The film, very explicit. Ana de Armas in there, playing Marilyn Monroe. A lot of people are very protective of the legacy of Marilyn Monroe, and so I think they have to tread carefully here. There could be a huge backlash against this. In fact, I think there is a bit of a backlash against what this film could do and could suggest. I think in the original book, Joyce Carol Oates suggested that perhaps Marilyn Monroe was assassinated. It put me in mind of, though, a film years ago directed by Nick Roeg. I don't know if any of you remember this, called Insignificance, and it was based on a play, I think, in which 4 sort of major historical characters, Einstein, I think, was one, McCarthy was another, DiMaggio, was it, the baseball player, and Marilyn Monroe, and they all hook up in a room, and I can't remember what else happens there. It all goes a bit bizarre. I think nuclear war happens, and really weird, but I really remember it. So that's the only time I've ever seen Marilyn Monroe represented by someone else. But in the photos of Ana de Armas as Marilyn Monroe, you can see why they cast her. Streaming, in the land of streaming, and Apple TV, which they're pumping their stuff out now, aren't they? Severance, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. Apple TV have got a new ensemble anthology series, and it's called Raw, and it's based on Cecilia Ahern's short story collection, which I've got somewhere over there. And it's a bizarre kind of combination. I think a trailer landed this week. And it's a bizarre sort of pull together. As I said, an anthology series is where each episode is kind of bound together thematically, but they tell slightly different stories from different perspectives. And so you've got a whole host of actresses in this, and I guess the collective sort of sense of the series is the way in which women are put upon, controlled, the way in which they have to sort of overcome, you know, what it means to be a woman in different circumstances. And so within the trailer, you've got things like Nicole Kidman plays a character who snacks and eats Polaroid photos and photographs of herself. You've got Betty Gilpin, who gets nailed to a mantelpiece above a fireplace. Very strange. Mira Sayal, who we haven't seen for years anywhere doing anything, it pops up in the middle of this sort of Americana series, and she's trying to get a refund in a sort of store for her husband. Alison Brie is in there as a ghost trying to solve her own murder. Issa Rae is in there talking, but men can't hear a word she's saying. Kind of metaphorical there. You know, I think a lot of these stories that were threaded through them as the metaphorical kind of ideas of what it means to be a woman in relationships, in work, and in the world. We've also got Cynthia Erivo finding mysterious bite marks all over herself, and Merritt Weaver falling in love with a duck. There's something about all of that collection of kind of weirdness that really, really draws me to it. So I think that's quite exciting. That's coming to Apple TV. Now, this story is just broken on Friday. This is massive. This is weird. This is just a weird story. But the more you sort of read into it, you think, oh yeah, why hasn't this been done before? A James Bond inspired competition series has been ordered or picked up by Amazon Prime. It's basically a competition show that's inspired by the 007, the British secret agent James Bond, and it's going to be an 8-part series, and it's called 007's Road to a Million. And this is the blurb for the show. The show will see contestants competing in a global adventure to win the ultimate prize of up to £1 million. It's going to be filmed in countless locations where lots of the Bond films have been shot. It's going to be shot in a cinematic format. Don't know what that means. Perhaps widescreen, maybe stunts, maybe sort of, you know, actors and set up scenes that you have to pass through, that kind of thing. So maybe quite immersive for the contestants. And they're going to have to conquer physical obstacles. They're going to have to solve things. They're going to have to work in two-person teams and stuff like that. Correctly answer questions. It's like Crystal Maze on crystal meth in a Tom Ford suit. That's what it is. But you know what? When I read that, I thought, yeah, that could be quite something. It's going to be like the high end of, what is it, Hunted or Wanted or whatever it is on Channel 4, but it's going to be taken writ large. So all those emblematic locations from all the films, they're going to be able to riff on all those old films. I think it's quite a nice way of kind of resurrecting the sort of nostalgia and feel that we had and everything we liked about those older films. I wonder if Nadia's father, who was in 2 of them, will be roped in to be in some of the scenes. You may have heard that Tim Burton is doing a series spin-off of the Addams Family. It's called Wednesday. It's not out on Wednesday, and it's Friday today, but he's making it for Netflix. But here's the thing, Christina Ricci, who I fell in love with Christina Ricci years ago when she emerged on the scene. I can't remember what she was in. Was it American Buffalo or so? She was in Buffalo 60. She was in an odd film, a couple of odd sort of indie films, and she was just like, oh, wow, who is she? Well, Christina Ricci is back. She's joining the Addams Family spin-off series, but she's not reprising her role as Wednesday. That accolade is going to Jenny Ortega, who you can see at the moment as a boom operator in the horror film X. You've got Catherine Zeta-Jones in there as Morticia. You've got Luis Guzman in there as Gomez. And you've even got Gwendoline Christie from Star Wars and Game of Thrones in there, who's going to be the school principal and Morticia's longtime rival. The synopsis of Wednesday is as follows. It's set to follow the family's wayward daughter during her high school years at Nevermore Academy, where she'll learn to master her psychic powers as she tries to stop monstrous murders while simultaneously investigating a supernatural mystery that affected her family years before. I mean, I'm curious to know how Tim Burton will deal with this. I'm a big fan of Tim Burton, but I have to say, sometimes Tim Burton's films look great, but they really don't engage emotionally. There's sort of something that holds your arm's length. I don't know whether it's how successfully he executes either the animation or the costumes, or he gets fixated on the sort of the look, and sometimes I worry he loses sight of the heart. And so my hope is that this spin-off Wednesday will have some heart, and I think Christina Ricci is definitely one of those actresses who could deliver that and bring some of it to it. So I think she's come on board. She's replaced Thora Birch. Yeah, it'd be nice for Christina Ricci to get back in the Addams family, won't it? Now, we discussed this on Coffee Moaning earlier in the week, which is our sort of morning news roundup chat every morning. Amy Schumer, the comedian, actress, writer, has talked about, she's one of the hosts at the Oscars this year, and she's been talking about getting President Zelensky of Ukraine to somehow appear at the Oscars. Now, a number of you very validly said, isn't he otherwise engaged? Isn't he otherwise busy? Doesn't he have a lot more on his agenda rather than popping up at the Oscars? But I think there's quite a sort of meaningful one of the big idea behind Amy Schumer's request. She says, I actually pitched, I wanted to find a way to have Zelensky satellite in or make a tape or something, just because there are so many eyes on the Oscars. I'm not afraid to go there, but it's not me producing the Oscars. I get her point. I mean, one of the problems, though, for the Oscars, which is why there's all sorts of other controversies going on around the Oscars this year, is that their viewing figures, I think, have dropped from something like 40 million down to 10 million a year. So whilst there are lots of eyes on it, there aren't half as many eyes on it as there used to be. Tonally, I don't know how that would float. I mean, I think it's one thing talking to, the American government. It's another turning up in the House of Commons on a big screen. But I think would he not become a bit of a laughing stock? Would it not be seen as a bit frivolous if he was to pop up at the Oscars? Perhaps recording a meaningful message that could work. So I think there's a good thought at the back of what Amy's saying. I don't think it's just celebrities wanting to be lovey and in any way diminishing what it is that that's going on in the world. And sticking with the Oscars, of course, there's been some controversy in the last week or a couple of weeks, which has been kicked back against by the likes of Steven Spielberg and Jane Campion, who herself is nominated for Best Director, that they're removing something like 8 categories of award giving from the ceremony's evening. They're called below-the-line categories, and they include things like nominees for short films, live action, Oscar nominations for editing, score. I mean, that's Hans Zimmerland and all that kind of stuff, isn't it? Hair and makeup, sound and production design. They're all going to be seated an hour before the actual kind of ceremony. They're going to have their prizes given out. They're going to be able to talk about them, but they're not going to be seen. They're not going to be heard. And then all the kind of really famous and important people are going to sit down, and then they're all going to do their bits, which really does suggest that there's kind of like the important lot, and then there's the really unimportant lot. And so that hierarchy isn't going down well, to the point that the members or potential winners of the awards or Oscars in those 8 categories are talking about and threatening to do things like hold their Oscars upside down, or wear their name badges the wrong way round, or perhaps give their acceptance speeches with their heads back to the, with their heads to the camera, back of their heads to the camera. In their own way, they're wanting to usurp and upset and sort of disrupt the smooth running of the Oscars. But I think there's many people who would agree that it's too long and too arduous, the whole ceremony process. But I tell you what they could do: get rid of all the bloody stupid acts in between. I mean, I have to say, the way it all goes, curtains go and then a new song comes out and you don't care about the song because it's from a film. Show more clips. I don't know. I could cope with all the categories if they just cut out all that stuff. There's got to be other ways of dealing with the fact that the number of viewers is cratering. This story I wanted to include because it's about a YouTuber, a film critic, reviewer, trailer reactor called Chris Stuckman, who's been doing film reviews for years on YouTube. He's a great inspiration to me. I really like his channel. I think I like the way he approaches films and stuff like that. Well, he's in the process of trying to kickstart and fund his own horror film movie. And his film, which is called Shelby Oaks, or his working title, Shelby Oaks, has broken records when it comes to raising money to make a film on Kickstarter. As I say, his name's Chris Stuckman, but the feature that he wants to make has now raised more than $1 million on Kickstarter and has something like over 11,000 backers. Because you know the idea with Kickstarter is you could contribute some money, and in return, if it's over a certain amount of money, you become a sort of producer, or you become an angel, like a creative angel involved with the project. But because he's pushed past such a huge sort of benchmark of $1 million, the studios are now beginning to take notice, and they're thinking of kind of chipping in. And so what is the film about? Well, the film is about a fictional mid-2000s noughties US investigative team who were called the Paranormal Paranoids. And there's all sorts of footage of people being abducted and what have you that have been found. There's real footage that Chris Stuckman is going to be using as inspiration for this film. A little bit Blair Witch Project-y, the idea that the people who shot the film have been abducted or have disappeared. But whether this footage is true or not, I think that's the point. I think we're in this sort of pre-production, pre-filmmaking kind of no man's land, Bermuda Triangle. Is this real? Isn't it real? We don't know. And I think that's the point. That's part of the kind of promo, if you like, for the film project. And Chris Stuckman himself says, it's so crazy, I don't know what to say. We can already make the movie in the way we want to. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I love how this really means the world to him. And I love the fact that he's come up through YouTube, his passion is film, and he's managed to he's getting there, almost realise a dream. Inspiration for all of us. And finally, sticking with the Oscars, of course, there's all the controversy about the categories. There's all the controversy about whether it really rewards the right films. Are they all a bit sort of, esoteric? Is The Power of the Dog the most boring film on the planet? Why isn't No Time to Die in there? Why isn't Dune going to win Best Picture? Personally, why isn't Licorice Pizza going to win Best Picture? Worthy films, some of which are incredibly important. But there is an argument that perhaps they're a bit too worthy, and so that's why this year the Oscars have introduced the sort of people's vote to see what sort of film the general public, God forbid, would choose to win an Oscar. But behind the scenes, let's think about the stuff that really matters. What really matters is what's going to be in those goodie bags that all the kind of guests get when they go to the Oscars. Well, this year's Oscars goodie bags, guess how much they're worth? They're worth £76,000 each. Now, I went to the Morbius fan screening last night, and we were given a small bag of popcorn and a tin of water. Oh, and a small brown and greens, is it? Or green and blacks chocolate bar. I thought, Christ, we've hit pay. This is amazing. £76,000 goodie bag. And it includes life coaching sessions up to the value of £530, nibbles and drinks. You can have a £7,000 liposuction treatment, the Art Lipo. You can get a castle stay in Scotland, I kid you not. And you can also get land ownership titles. So you can become a laird, a lord, or a lady. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? And you can also win a plot of land in Scotland. I mean, I don't know who's carving up Scotland and taking all these titles and handing them out. I think they're a bit light-hearted, and I don't think they're actually legally binding. But you could have Lord Denzel Washington, and you could have Lady Gaga or something like that, couldn't you? But yeah, so spare a thought. I don't know how seeing Zelensky, courtesy of Amy Schumer, on a sort of video link and a £76,000 goodie bag, that contrast feels a little bit tasteless, if you ask me. And so that brings us to the films of the week. What are the films of the week this week? Well, there's a film called The Worst Person in the World. This is a Nordic film about a woman called Julie, and it charts her life over 4 years as she falls in and out of relationships. She's a bit of a lost soul. She's trying to find purpose in her life. She's trying to work out what the skills are that she needs to have a meaningful life. What makes a meaningful life? Does work make a meaningful life? Is a meaningful life relationships? Is it friendships? What is it? And so we chart her life across the period of 4 films. This film has been garlanded with nominations, and it's won a few awards on the festival circuit. So it's, and I think it might be Norway's or one of the Nordic countries' entries for the Academy Awards. I think it might be nominated for an Oscar. So it's kind of fortuitous that it's landing the week of the Oscars. So if you fancy that, it's not too esoteric. It looks kind of fun. Looking at the trailer, it looks fun. It looks bright and breezy. There looks like there's a bit of kind of magic surrealism in there as well. So I think it'll be quite a treat. And the other film at the other end of the spectrum is a film called Ambulance. And this stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who was in Candyman. And this is a film about two, I don't think they're not blood brothers, they're kind of adoptive brothers. And I think they commit some kind of a crime, but they hijack or they take control of an ambulance as a getaway vehicle, and in the process they have a couple of either a patient and a nurse in the back, and so it's really a film about them trying to escape being caught whilst not killing their hostages, because I think bonds and relationships are built up. So it sounds a bit screwbally. I don't know if it is a screwball comedy or whether it's just an action film, but that could be good. That could be, if you fancy a seat of your pants. Jake Jake Gyllenhaal always delivers. And often I go to a Jake Gyllenhaal film, you know, thinking this could be one of those little quiet gems like Nightcrawler or End of Watch. You know, I went not expecting much from either of those, and there's always rich pickings in a Jake Gyllenhaal film. And there you have this week's Rushed Rush through the weekly rushes. Hope you enjoy the Oscars, and you never know, Nadia might let me stay up late and watch them with you.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.